Dear friends, this is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with the 31 days of gangster films and police films from the year 1970 to the present day. And it is my hope that this can afford us, you and me, with the opportunity to be able to speak about as many films as possible in the context of these really electrifying and invigorating and entertaining genres of cinema, those being the gangster film and the police film genres respectively. In that spirit, today, and specifically for this video, I'd like to focus in on the gangster film element of such equation, and I have a work that is one of my favorites. It is a film that I saw over and over again. And we had it on VHS. It was, at the time, it was a 2-tape VHS set, and then later with various changes in physical media, home viewing formats. It was then on DVD and then Blu-ray and then beyond, of course. And so this is a film that has stuck with me over the years, ever since or around its release, and it has never let go. And it is a work from an electrifying filmmaker, a filmmaker that we have spoken of already during the 31 days, and I dare say we may speak about again in the future. This is a filmmaker whose work is vast, is incredibly prolific, incredibly worldwide regarded, masterpieces galore from this master filmmaker. This is a work that is described as being from 1995, and it has a legendary cast, included in which are people like Sharon Stone and James Woods and Don Rickles and Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro stars as the character of Ace Rothstein, and Joe Pesci as Nicky Santoro, and Sharon Stone as Ginger. And this is the work directed by Martin Scorsese, and I'm speaking of the film that is Casino. Casino is, for me, one of those great landmarks of Martin Scorsese's works in a filmography that is filled to the brim with landmarks and milestones. This is one of my favorites from Scorsese, and I remember when it was released around the mid-90s, I was able to get a VHS tape set. It was a two-tape VHS set, if I recall. And I remember watching that over and over again, and tape 1 and then going into tape 2, etc. And so those were the days in terms of that was one of the films that I saw over and over again on a loop, as it were, growing up in the mid to late 90s. And this film's grip on me has since then never let up. It has never let go. And I think I am so grateful for that, because what a compelling, absorbing, surprising, quite experimental in terms of form and style this film is in many respects. So we have essentially the mafia, the mob, that is trying to make inroads in terms of a direct grasp or control over these various operations, focusing in on casino gambling in Las Vegas. And then the operation then involves the handling of a very key operations spot. This is within the context of the film known as the Tangiers, a casino hotel in Las Vegas, to be run by Ace Rothstein, the Robert De Niro character. And he is mob-backed, he is endorsed, as it were, but he is also, and he is also, as we discover, very shrewd and very precise with numbers, and he is very skilled at picking winners and picking and handling bets and gambling and the like. So a gambling expert and enthusiast, well, a total gambling expert through and through. And this is the person, mob-backed, who is essentially running this casino. And you add on to that various elements that are layered in, the ins and outs of casino operations, the daily routines, trying to understand the psychology of gamblers and trying to take advantage of that, because the ultimate aim of the casino operators, who are the mob here, the ultimate aim is to get money, is to win money. And so how will they do that? Through these gambling operations. So that's one aspect that is handled with such deftness and such cleverness, and a swirl and whirlwind of camera work and technique that is also very much experimental, very much also taking into consideration nouvelle vague techniques, etc., which we understand is part of Martin Scorsese's own, say, cinema character makeup, in terms of all the places where he finds inspiration in terms of his own filmmaking artistry. So that is one aspect that is handled with such care and precision and artistry that is so, as I say, a whirlwind of cinematic prowess on display here with regard to that. But that's not all where we have this so-called cinematic prowess. On top of that, or aligned with that, or perhaps parallel to that, or in contradiction to that, that type of world order within the environment of the casino and the hotel and Las Vegas, we also have the introduction or the reintroduction of other, say, mafia figures that play in very closely with Ace Rothstein's own network and operations, both professionally and personally. And so this is represented by Joe Pesci and his crew that come in and try to be protectors, enforcers, friends, associates that are trying essentially, or that are given the mission essentially by the mob to protect their interests in Las Vegas, those being keeping the money flow running, keeping the what's known as the skimming the top off, taking just enough, but trying to avoid attracting too much attention from law enforcement, trying not to attract too much heat, as it were. So the mob is very much invested in trying to protect their investment and their interests. And so that means bringing along, or through a certain set of circumstances that are related to that particular ambition, we have the introduction of Nicky Santoro, the Joe Pesci character, and how that further embellishes and entertains and also complicates this cinematic landscape that we as viewers are watching. Because as we get into the nitty-gritty, and as the time passes, and as more and more little details begin to pile up, we begin to realize that these relationships are incredibly complex and sensitive, and they are dependent on so many external factors and internal factors and psychological factors that begin to pile up as the stakes grow and grow and grow. And not only that, I mentioned the professional aspect, there's also the deeply personal aspect that is represented between the bonds, or the testing of those bonds between these various characters, and including the very, very important character, Sharon Stone's Ginger, and how she meets Ace Rothstein and also Nicky Santoro, and how her background and her own, say, skills and her own physical presence and her own very, very alluring character and charm, as well as her own deep-rooted personal emotional journey that we understand to a certain degree as we watch the film, how that also adds to the dimension of these various relationships and characters, and how that further adds to more and more emotional complexity that builds and builds and builds until it can no longer be bottled up. It has to explode forth. And when it explodes forth, and when everything begins to become threatened by chaos, mayhem, and destruction, wow, this becomes a almost boiling point of passions that are just going to explode before our very eyes. Again, set against the backdrop of the casino gambling paradise that is Las Vegas in the 1970s. This is the film Casino from Martin Scorsese. So, as those of you who know the film Casino will no doubt be aware of, you know that this is based upon original underlying work by Nicholas Pileggi, and also worked on between him and Martin Scorsese and others for purposes of creating a film that purports to be based upon true events, although we understand at the same time it does change a number of details for purposes of creating this story that is set in cinema. So that is one aspect to keep in mind. But that also means that we are in for a very, I think, epic and detail-driven crime saga to the max, which is populated so thoroughly and so confidently with many sub-episodes or subplots or subplots that creates this maze, this great, beautifully confusing maze of things that build here, connections here. There are geographical connections that span not just Las Vegas, but across the country. There are implications, and even across the world, in fact, implications that are very long-lasting and long-driven. And that also is emblematic in the web and the network of characters. This is a huge network of characters that is handled with such grace and also with such dexterity of cinematic, say, agility, that it is really amazing to see how it all hangs together. And it has this great confusing swirl to it as well, because there is a sense also of euphoria and almost hysteria as well as the highs and the great highs and the deep lows that are associated with these high stakes, high adrenaline rush atmosphere situations that a place like a casino, where the sky's the limit kind of thing. A place like a casino is the place of this high adrenaline rush entertainment. And I think that is exemplified by the rush of characters, the rush of the scenarios and the episodes as they're presented here. But it's in this great, breathtaking way, and it's handled. And I think that's part of the purpose of this, is also to give a sense of the deep web of networking that is involved. There's the surface, and there's the level below the surface, and there's one level below, and there's one level below. Not to mention the fact the levels that extend beyond the frame, as it were. So I think it is a wonderfully purposely applied confusion and swirl that is meant also to give a sense of the adrenaline rush and the hysteria that also links in, I think, quite comfortably to the idea of chaos and destruction that is just lurking around the corner. And also we have here, and again, associated with that and expressed in cinematic terms, Martin Scorsese and company really give us a tour de force of cinema stylings. And this is in visual terms, because he uses techniques, editing techniques, and camera techniques and lighting techniques that give a real experimental flair and rush to it. I mean, there is almost a meta sense of how cinema seems to be, the grammar rules seem to be created and broken before our very eyes in this exhilarating rush of a cinematic confidence from Martin Scorsese. So this is, and company, and so this is a real delight to see, and it's so breathtaking in terms of the story and also in terms of the cinematic craft. And speaking of the cinematic craft, what is amazing too is the structure. The structure is such that we have many, say, it's so complex that it requires more than one narrator And so that is another aspect that we have seen in other films, of course, including the works of Scorsese, but it is applied here in a way that, as I mentioned before, could be described as experimental. It also is very emotional, very psychologically driven, and the way that these multiple narrations are used as well, I think, is done to incredible effect, incredible effect, as we go from story to story to story to story to the inevitable conclusions of this piece. So it is a very clever how that aspect of the story structure and narration is those aspects are applied in this film. And I must say, too, that speaking of the story structure and the character arcs and developments, we have to mention the great performances. These performances are so well drawn out. They have the whole range, as it were, of lived-in experience, again set against the backdrop of these high stakes, high antics, high pressure situations that the casino gambling life of the 1970s and the Tangiers seem to be associated with, as well as connections with mob and also law enforcement, etc. So we have Sharon Stone and James Woods and Don Rickles, I mentioned. That's a great performance. And I must say, too, Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci, Ace Rothstein and Nicky Santoro, respectively. And this is one of those, I mean, if you have a film with Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci together, I mean, there's a reason why that combination is so celebrated by many a film fan across the globe. And there's so many reasons for that. One of those reasons is Casino. You watch Casino and you think, my goodness, you have these artists together, and they are just, when they're together, there is magic. How should I say? Even when we are, say, watching the film and we are in the middle of the desert, there is magic in the air when these actors collide. And when they collide, my goodness, do they collide. It is a phenomenal thing to witness and to see these performances. And what I love, too, is that they are so tempered and so they are arguably different. There are similarities, one can say, with, say, past performances or even future performances in other works of Scorsese. And perhaps with regard to Casino, there have been many comparisons made to, say, another work made by Martin Scorsese earlier in the 1990s that is set against the backdrop of the gangster life. And we might talk about that film sometime in the future. But while there might be said to be connections with other past and maybe even future works from Scorsese in the gangster film context, I think there are great and compelling arguments to be made that there are significant and striking differences as well. And one of those differences I would suggest is in the way in which these characters are presented and they are shown. And, you know, the character of Ace Rothstein, when compared to, say, other characterizations made by Robert De Niro in past and future Scorsese works, and Nicky Santoro, how he is performed by Joe Pesci. And now there are some similarities, but also very striking differences between, say, his character and other Joe Pesci characters in Martin Scorsese's films. So this, I think, adds further weight and further depth to this film in terms of a standalone movie watching experience, as well as part of the spectrum, if you will, of the Scorsese gangster film universe, or a cycle of films. And I think we can begin to see, as I've mentioned maybe in the past, how this film, I think, also in that context fits really nicely in that discussion. Here we have a film, Casino, that could be said to be about levels of power, levels of authority in the context of casino gambling, the mafia, the mob, and how professional interests and personal interests do not always gel. There may be some very significant cracks and fissures and indeed breaks that lead to unavoidable chaos and destruction. But what will those mean specifically, and what are the ramifications of such situations? You have to wait and see and watch to the very end of this work, Casino. This is one of my favorites from Scorsese, and let me now just end the conversation by just saying that, as I said before, I saw this so many times as a kid. It was, and still is, a film that I can't, I don't know, I've seen it so many times I've lost count. And there are many moments that I have memorized, seen it so many times. I have many passages, quotes and dialogue memorized. And there are many stories that I've seen so many times, but I always tend to forget. And then when I watch it again, I think, oh yes, that was this. So it's that type of labyrinth of a film that is so remarkable and wonderful. And that's my way of saying that it feels like every time I watch it, it feels so fresh and new and exciting, and I'm always surprised. Even when I'm recalling what it is I've seen before, I still remain surprised in a very pleasant way. I love this film so much. I think this is great. This is top tier Scorsese in my view. This is the stuff that made me I was already a Scorsese fan before, but this really sealed the deal for me, as I say, when I saw it in the mid-90s. And from then on, my life changed as a cinema lover on my own cinema journey. So this is the work from 1995. That is Casino. Okay, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very, very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.